All right, let's talk playoff. Let's take a look at the top 20 playoff team results. Now, these are the top 20 teams in the actual playoff rankings, so we're not looking at AP or anything anymore. You see some teams lost. Georgia losing to Ole Miss, which I know some Tennessee fans were for that. We told you last week you don't want to pull for that because that's not a help to you that Georgia lost to Ole Miss. Miami loses to Georgia Tech. LSU whipped by Alabama. That's good for you because Alabama's your best win. You need them to keep winning. Iowa State, they've dropped out. They've lost 2 in a row. Pitt's lost 2 in a row, so they're done in the playoff conversation. Let's take a look at the current SEC standings. All right, Tennessee way up at their top, at the top of this thing, 8-1 overall, 5-1 in the conference, tied with Texas A&M, 5-1. Texas, the only other team with 1 loss in the conference. If you can get past Georgia, you are staring Atlanta right in the face, and you're also locked into a playoff spot for the most part. Now, there are some gray lines there. It doesn't show up great on this monitor, but to show you the teams you've played, Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Oklahoma, Kentucky, Mississippi State. Alabama and Arkansas are the only 2 with winning records there. You've played 4 of the 5 worst teams in the conference. That's not helping your schedule. Arkansas is in red because that's a team you played and you lost to them. Let's take a look at the SEC playoff contender resumes. This kind of gets into what I was talking about. Tennessee 8-1 overall. They're 1-0 versus ranked opponents, and they've only beaten 2 teams with winning records. Okay. Now we all say that all these teams play bad teams. Yeah, well, you picked 2 of the worst bad teams in the country. That's why Kent State's never going to have a winning record. Chattanooga is an FCS team. UTEP's never going to have a winning record. Colorado State does. Louisiana Monroe does. Georgia Southern does. Bowling Green does. Western Kentucky does. Buffalo does. That's what you see over there on the right. You have played fewer teams. You've beaten fewer teams with winning records than anybody else in the conference except Georgia, and their 2 were against Clemson and Texas, which is better than Arkansas and Alabama. Well, I'm sorry, that Arkansas is a team you played. You didn't beat them, so that's not even right. There's 1. So my apologies. That's what happens when you build a graphic at 4 a.m. So it's 1 with Alabama. In terms of Alabama, they've beaten 6 teams with winning records. So when you get into the playoff race, remember that's something they mentioned about Tennessee this past week. Well, they were 4-1 against teams with winning records. They lost a couple of those teams because they lost this week, so they're back to 500 or worse. All right, take a look at the current playoff bracket. This is the week 1 bracket. And Tennessee was the 8th seed. I'm sorry, they were the 8th seed, and it meant Indiana coming here. Okay, now you shake out what happened, and the Athletic, they project forward. Based off what happened today, they got a computer model that tells you what's going to happen. Here's the way they see it shaking out after yesterday when all is said and done. Let's take a look at that one. Tennessee has dropped to 11th. They think they'll wind up 11th, barely in still, but they'll be going to Indiana in their computer model. So it was not a great day for Tennessee yesterday on all those fronts. Josh, thoughts? You said last week, and the Ole Miss thing, let's start there because you brought it up last week. If Ole Miss beats Georgia and you lose to Georgia, you'll have lost to two teams. They've beaten both of them.
Yeah, and Ole Miss beating up on Georgia if you lose to them, and that's before we throw in the Nico question, because if there's a question about Tennessee's quarterback position, and Ole Miss looks really good at quarterback and their offense looks really good as Tennessee's defense is, and that should help Tennessee. The committee, I think anybody, they're going to look at the quarterback position and how you feel. So Ole Miss beating Georgia does not help. I still think Tennessee's in a good position to get in if it can play a competitive game against Georgia. But yeah, it's probably traveling in the first round. The Bama dynamic is going to be really interesting. If you're battling Bama for a spot, Tennessee obviously has the head-to-head position. Tennessee fans are well aware of how the ranking ended 2 years ago when Tennessee had the head-to-head victory. Now, Hendon Hooker was not with Tennessee at that time. It was only a 14 playoff. But Bama's resume is really good. Head-to-head is the advantage to Tennessee.
Yeah, I mean, you get Alabama on your list, and they have 6 teams that they've beaten with.
Yeah, I think it's tough. Now, if I'm Tennessee and you control your own destiny, you win and you're in, like period, right? You're playing for an SEC title. Even if you lose the SEC title, you're in. Right?
Yeah, worst case winning next week, they're hosting in the first round.
Yeah, worst case scenario. I think also though, if that were to hold true of what you projected right there, I'll take an away game at Indiana all day long. You got 50,000 people. You've got a team that has won every game, but hasn't been really impressive. I'll line up against Indiana all day long, and I know I will beat them. So I'd take that. But again, as a player, you control your own
That's what
destiny.
their previous 10 opponents said.
Well, yeah, they didn't look great against Michigan. They really, again, have they? We'll see what they do against Ohio State.
Bigger concern, who knows who they're going to play at this.
Right.
That's a projection from weeks out based on a computer model. But I don't think you're going to see a hit this week in the rankings. I think you're going to be fine. Where that Ole Miss thing hurts you is if you lose to Georgia. That is going to hurt you. And also, if you beat Georgia, it's not going to have the same weight as it would have if they'd gone to Ole Miss and won. Then that would have made that Georgia one. That's kind of damaging long term, not short term. Again, I expect you to look pretty good when the things come out, tomorrow or Tuesday? But down the road, it could bite you.
Well, it could. And the thing about Tennessee, when we saw the rankings the other day that factored in strength of schedule, it was strength of schedule to that point. So then you're going to have to add UTEP.
Yeah.
So that's going to hurt you with your strength of schedule.
Missouri coming back and beating Oklahoma night didn't help you.
Yeah. So there's so many elements to this.
Yeah.
There's so many tentacles out there about what could go on with this. Yeah. I do think Tennessee, obviously, if they beat Georgia, no questions.
Yeah.
If they're 10-2 and they play Georgia close game, I think they're in good position. But you've also put yourself in a debate about if there are multiple 10-2 teams out there, how does your resume stack up against them? I don't know all the 10-2 teams yet, but your resume, your strength of schedule could end up hurting you.
Yeah, as we showed there, and just against the SEC teams that are combined with you. I mean, everybody has more wins against winning teams than you do. All those other Texas, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, Georgia, Alabama, Missouri, they all do.
Yeah, NC State
That's
didn't do us any favors. They sucked at the beginning, and they were overranked, and that hurt us.
Maybe
when you scheduled them a couple years ago, you're like, okay, that's a pretty good game. Now it's like,
no,
they weren't that
they're an
bad.
8-4 kind of program.
Well, but now they're not even an 8-4. They're awful.
I just know Alabama went to Wisconsin and won.
Yeah,
that's going to look better.
That was an impressive win.
Yep. And Georgia beat Clemson. You know, LSU lost, but they did play USC. But that's all right. Kent State was fun. All right. When we come back, the Vols head to Georgia. Let the previewing begin. We'll preview Vols Dogs next. Come on back.